JK Dobbins is out for the year. 2022 could even be a question mark to start the season. Gus Edwards, you are next man up. Welcome to the Footballguys Dynasty Show. And Jordan, what is left on this Baltimore backfield? What's the Dynasty play? And are they done supplementing the depth chart and what it looks like?
I think you tossed the easy part to me last there, Jed. I doubt they're done. How it all unfolds, I think that's going to be a story we're going to have to watch here over the next, 24 to 96 hours, something like that. Joe actually brought up I think it was Joe in our staff chat that watch post week 1 because that could be a girly non-guaranteed contract. I thought that was a good thought too in terms of timelines to watch. So if there's a bullet dodged this week, it might not necessarily be for the whole season. I thought that was a really interesting one. Devonta Freeman's now a free agent too, so that could be one that could land. But again, I don't like Gus Edwards was second in terms of rushing yards over expectation last year. He was the best percentage guy of rushing yards over expectation in terms of how many of his carries went over expectation. He's good, right? There's not going to be someone that is going to come in that is going to be better than him. There's just not. So it's all about the supplementing his role that I think we have to watch for now.
Yeah, where do you stand on the committee? That Baltimore is going to have plenty for maybe a flex viable number 2 back. Gus Edwards, limitations in the passing game. What do you think about the upside of Edwards? And is there enough left over that this is going to be a viable? Because like you said, we might not have the data points of they might add somebody, but yet you've got to decide maybe on Justice Hill or Tyson Williams this week in waivers and maybe within 24 hours of people listening to this.
Right. I think you're gonna have to decide between those two. I would say, I don't see how you would project him for worse than what you projected Dobbins for, right? Whatever you projected Dobbins as, what's the argument that Gus Edwards should be worse? Because he doesn't have the same quality of running back 2 behind him, right? The gap is much bigger there, and it's not like I don't think any of us are projecting Dobbins to have a huge passing game volume. So like when you look at it, I actually think there's less danger there to Gus Edwards. And this is a trend we see a lot. If there's a good backup, there can be less danger once the starter's hurt than there was to the starter, right? Because the gap's bigger. So that would be one thing I would say. Like if you were projecting Dobbins to have, I wouldn't have, but if you had projected him to have like a running back 1 type outcome this year, or a fringe running back 1, running back 2, I don't see why you wouldn't have Gus Edwards really darn close to that.
I gotcha. And what do you think about now found money? Gus Edwards was a 3rd round rookie pick valuation, maybe even the 4th, depending on who you found across your leagues to make said offer. But what do you think about now of maybe the buy sell line? From what I've seen, could be maybe there's opportunities to buy for a second. There's opportunities, or maybe you should be holding out to sell for a first. Do you agree or disagree with those two lines?
Just to sell for a straight second seems like a bail to me. Like, yeah, you got him at cheaper, but again, we do this on the opposite side, and we constantly call foul on it.
You buy for fourths, and yeah,
right. But we sort of get into a sunk cost situation where we say, well, we can't trade this player because we spent a second on him. We can't trade him for a third, and that's if that's what he's worth, or you think that's a good deal at this point, you shouldn't really worry about what you paid for. So like, hey, if you got him for a fourth. Now with all the information, like trading him for a third is still a bad process. You know what I mean? Like, so that would sort of be the thing there. Just because you got him for cheap doesn't mean I would necessarily just bail for a second to flip the script. Like, I think he's got difference making potential this year.
And he's under contract for next year. JK Dobbins is not a guarantee, a la Saquon Barkley, to maybe start full steam in week 1 or September or whatever next year. Could be some complications. Might not be a straightforward recovery where we're hearing just glowing things next July. So this could absolutely be one of those things that lingers. And they just extended him. They like Gus Edwards. They are in the Gus Edwards business, and that's noteworthy. I would say I like my philosophy this week for Williams and for Hill, where they are out there, is I would do sort of a price enforcing of like, I'm interested. I'm okay dipping my toe in the water, but I've had plenty of questions of people that want to drop like 25, 30, 35+%. And it's August/early September. So many appealing players, running backs or otherwise, are going to percolate up that if you just drop a third of your budget or a quarter of your budget on an ambiguous, we don't know which guy it's going to be. Justice Hill might be a little more Dobbins, and Williams might actually be closer in play style to Gus Edwards. They might want the yin and yang.
Yes.
So, and also, as you said, we might not get, it might be days beyond this waiver wire, beyond you dropping your budget on one of them and just taking a shot in the dark. I hope this is correct, and I hope I nail it. And if they end up adding somebody, just be careful. And I would just go on the side of lower. And you know what? You can always scoop somebody up for cheaper later on the rebound if it looks like they might be the initial wrong answer.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And that's a situation too, just to put a fine point on it, right? It's okay to be wrong on those. Like, take a shot at it. If you're wrong, like, don't hang on to it, right? If the answer is not Justice Hill, don't hang on to Justice Hill into November, right? Like, you can turn that roster spot. Yes.
Reassess. If he's running back 3 on the depth chart, or heck, if he fades to 4 because they brought in Gurley or something, or Devonta Freeman, you got to reassess. And if there's other primary backups, you got to go that direction. Sorry. And it makes, don't you say, like, you get clarity, but be wrong faster, right? I mean, the worst thing is being wrong, but wrong in the long way of, like, it was all season or most of the season. And you can just look back at that roster spot of being a complete drain. Now, the other side is JK Dobbins. Of some of the trades I've seen have been for a first next year. I find that quizzical because, I mean, both of those are looking ahead to next year. So neither is going to help you. The pick is liquid. The pick cannot have an injury setback. The pick cannot have a changing landscape a la Cam Akers, or something could change by the time they get back and maybe the starter again and back to where we are before the injury in 2021. Where do you stand on Dobbins, or is he just put on ice? I know you had some concerns about him before this, about his ultimate upside.
Yeah, and now I think it's very real. I mean, the question is do you want to tie that for a first deal to do that now? You're tying up an asset, right? You're tying up that doesn't turn into being, hey, this player can help me in the stretch run, right? This doesn't turn into, hey, I have a quarterback problem, I need to fix it, right? That you're tying up that asset into something long term. So if you're going to do that, just keep that in mind about the impact that has on your roster and your ability to make a deal here going down the stretch. I did it for Barkley last year. Like, I was fine doing that, and it was quizzical to me that I got offered that type of construct. But again, he was just a different category for me that I was fine doing it. You're now halfway through his rookie deal, right? And you haven't gotten a hit yet. Again,
and Edwards is going to be there for the rest of it. Because we talked about that a while back in the offseason when that occurred, that 2-year extension, now they align, and you may get that restricted, that's added year for JK Dobbins, but Edwards isn't going away. And even if you're the 1A here, there is a limitation, passing game and otherwise, here that is concerning, regardless of how good of a talent Dobbins is and he returns to in a future year.
Totally.
Yeah. I do think there is this one though. Like, if you're selling Dobbins, I mean, one was James Robinson in a first in 23. I think that's the old 2-way go of, like, well, I got James Robinson projected for this year. You got the pick in the future of what if I get it dead wrong? What if Robinson turns into a Fugazi, and then JK Dobbins ends up blowing up next year? You still have the pick to make it right. But you have you have this whole window here to easily get out in front of this deal. So that's what, if you are going to sell for a first, get a first and get a player that can actually in some form help you now to give you two facets of the deal, if just in case Dobbins turns into something pronounced as a core player and producer in the future.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw the James Robinson for a first in 2023. The other one I think is interesting is JK Dobbins for Javonte Williams. You're basically resetting the clock, which is interesting.
Well, you're getting younger, hilarious, right? Because Dobbins, the next meaningful game he plays, he's going to be 23.7 or 8 or something like that. And Javonte Williams, projected 22 starter, you would think, with no Melvin Gordon, and who knows what happens this year, but 21 years old and better pedigree, higher round 2 pick.
Right.
Who'd have thought?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
All right, this is Chad Parsons, Jordan McNamara, episode 68 of the Football Guys Dynasty Show. And the other big moving piece here we have is Cam Newton. Might have been the week 1 starter, not even on the team. So where he is going to land, Superflex, he's going to be an interesting, does he get dropped in some of those more shallow Superflex? I would say in one quarterback, you probably cut him and move on. He might have been your QB3 or beyond, or you might have better two second quarterback options. And then Mac Jones, wheels up. We haven't talked about him a ton in the preseason, but he's looked the part. A lot of his attributes from college have translated over. It's the preseason. Let's put that in italics and moniker and asterisks and all that. But it's going to be his show starting week 1, where you don't have that guarantee with Trey Lance or Justin Fields of, hey, could be super flex viable in that secondary spot for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mac Jones is really interesting. Plus, they clear the deck for him, right? You saw that with they cut Cam Newton. You saw the same thing happen with Trevor Lawrence, where they traded Gardner Minshew. So you're not going to have any of that, that traffic for you to have to jump over. Here's my question: why would you spend a first-round startup pick on Joe Burrow when you can spend a sixth-round startup pick on Mac Jones? Right. I mean, to me, it's like fishing with dynamite. Like, they have the same profile and they're being treated massively different. And you have the exact same questions about them. At least I do, in terms of like, hey, they elite production coming from historically really good profiles. Like, why not take that bet when it's 5 rounds cheaper in a startup draft? So
one of them has way better hair. So we can probably start there. Coming from 2 guys that have a combined like inch on the top of our head. So yeah, there's definitely some sunshine, quarterback sunshine envy there. But yeah, what you're saying, it's always the arbitrage, of getting the pedigree. And Mac Jones, it's not, Joe Burrow had a great season. Mac Jones had a great season, and one of them is really, really cheap right now, and one of them's healthy. One of them's attached to Bill Belichick. One of them has improved weapons from a year ago, where it was an S show for the Patriots through the air. I don't know. I don't know what the ceiling is, but I do feel pretty comfortable saying the floor is pretty good. He's dropping things in buckets, and you can say there's whatever coverage, but if you're putting it over a guy, you're placing it in the right spot. Rarely is he making an uncatchable ball or a bad decision of where the ball should go. And again, does that top out as like a QB2 in fantasy because he's not going to be a big runner? I think he's underrated as a mover, but we'll see, what all this means on the, the end result line. But, I think the outright bust of like by the end of 2022, it's like, oh, I don't know if Mac Jones is going to be the starter. I don't have as much concern about that as I did before the preseason and, maybe back, 12 months ago, certainly.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think we have that more with like Tua right now, right? Like, you don't have that same Tua concern with Mac Jones, which is interesting given the way that the dynasty community has treated them and the difference in their cost. I think that's a really interesting one. I mean, I if Joe Burrow's not going to run, right, and post injury, right, if that's not going to be something that he's going to offer, or we're going to struggle to get all of that back, right? Like, I don't know how it's that big of a gap. So,
well, he's got to be a diabolical passer. We've said it before. To get big upside, you got to be a runner. You got to be a really good passer and a good runner, or you have to be an elite runner. That's it. There's two Venn, the Venn diagram, and the middle is what you love, and then if you get an extreme giant circle of one of them, then you got a chance.
Yeah.
And yeah, with Burrow, if he's going to the more or less mobile version, then he kind of blends in with a lot of the other, suboptimal mobility guys, and you start falling behind. I always use it as like 250, 300 yards rushing. If you can get to there, you're going to hang around. If you have the chance for maybe 2 to 4 touchdowns in one of your best seasons, you can hang and you're not going to fall behind. But man, you get the Phillip Rivers stuff going on, the guys that are like sub 100 yards and maybe 1 touchdown. It's tough. It really is tough. At least Brady, he still does the goal lines. He can still run 3 or 4 or 5 goal line sneak touchdowns.
The best quarterback sneaker of all time, right?
Exactly. Man, he's the only guy. Like, I love it when they used to run the quarterback sneak and be on a quick count, and he would get like 4 yards. Like, it'd be 3rd and 1, hustle up to the line. We're gonna quick snap this, and only the center knows, and it's like boom, 5 yards. Like, legitimate running back carry. What do you think about Cam Newton? Is he going to be one that if someone drops him and you already have, say, 3 quarterbacks, is he someone that's profile interesting at this point? Do you think he's either going to be out of the league or a number 2? Do you think he's going to have interest in the next few weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll probably have interest. I don't know exactly who it's going to be right now. There's only so many guys that are competent walking around. He's one of them, right? So I don't know how that ends up panning out. Is Washington a team that could make some sense, right? That's the place that he's been linked to. So I would, if he's out there, I would add him. Would I trade a second for him right now? Like, I probably wouldn't do that. But if he lands up on the waiver wire, I think I would take a shot at him. And again, it's a lottery ticket. It's an early reveal, right? It's a scratch off. You kind of know sooner rather than later.
And please don't cut him. I know a lot of people, I've actually seen it in some of the email notifications of league activity that, people get dropped NFL wise off of a 53. And that means in Dynasty, I must cut them. That I'm going to have a parallel reaction to this. And Cam Newton is one of the select few where you say, let this simmer a little bit, still make the same waiver wire decisions you would make, but don't knee jerk assume that you are cutting them. Assess the options, because his profile is better than a lot of guys right now lining up to be an injury away quarterback in those deeper formats, that all those guys end up being viable. And there's a number of depth charts where he can actually improve that number 2 spot. And he still has the rushing upside, which you just discussed. Not everybody has, and that's the fast track to being more viable than you would be otherwise. And I'm not going to say I give him a pass, but he had a horrific year last year, but he also was dealing with some injury and recovery. He was also COVID, and he was also dealing with, let's face it, one of the worst skill sets around him, set of weapons. It was pretty pedestrian. So, and that's being kind. So things are likely better wherever he goes, even if he was the Patriots starter. So it was a special circumstance. Not saying he's going to come back and be a top 12 option, but to give him a little bit of a pass with extenuating circumstance, I think is pretty sound coming into this year and maybe a future opportunity.
Yeah, if memory serves, you got a tryout for their skill positions last year, right, Chad? I could be missing that, but
I showed up.
That's the level that they were at.
I ran a 4.87. My speed score was 61, and they said, "Get out of here! You're here for ball boy, right? Are you willing to work all summer for no pay?" And I said, "No, I'm not." And it's like, next, maybe the stadium staff is hiring.
Yeah,
you work on Sundays. I said, done. Want to remind you, the Footballguys mobile app is back for 2021. You get custom projections, dominating your waiver wire, trading, you synced rosters, everything you need up in the Apple and Google Play stores. Have some trading. We actually have now a listener and super fan request. I had an email, so want to put them up at the front of the line here, and it's applicable. We've got Damian Harris. Did not mention him up at the top of the show, but we've got in a 1 quarterback league, 106 yet to draft, and we've got Damian Harris for Josh Jacobs, Evan Ingram, and a second next year. It is notable that the team trading away Damian Harris, not a contender. They're one of the 3 or 4 worst teams in the league.
So the team trading away Harris, and they'd be getting back Jacobs, Ingram, and a second.
Right.
And it's 106 this year?
Yes.
Okay, so they haven't drafted yet.
But
is that what's
probably could be Sermon, could be someone of that ilk.
Could it be Etienne?
Yeah, probably.
So I mean, I think you have to. That's an interesting one. Man, I mean, this kind of feels like Jacobs is a little bit more valuable than the 106, and then it's basically Harris for Ingram in a second. Ingram's banged up. There's some moving spots in there, but I don't know. I think
quarterback to the second loses some steam.
Yeah.
I would have kept those 6, and probably played with that a little more. Not saying you can't trade it away, but I would have been a little more selective. I do like getting Jacobs, but you might have wanted to move 106 and Harris for like a cornerstone wide receiver, right? I mean, if you're building up and your window is not this year is relatively insignificant. I mean, can you move 106 and Harris for maybe, Brandon Ayuk and something, or get a younger guy that really extends your window, because Damian Harris, similar to Josh Jacobs in age, and then 106 could obviously be a 21-year-old. So to me, the team direction part of this, it seems like it would almost make a little more sense if you were a contender.
Mm-hmm.
But I still feel like you could have got more, because I don't know if you have to add 106 to get Jacobs. Like, I don't know. It feels a little robust for what the market would offer.
Yeah. I can't imagine that the difference between Jacobs and Harris is that much.
Right. Mid first. And like you mentioned, I mean, we can get ETN, we can get Sermon, we can get guys that basically have the perfect storm upside of either of those guys, this year, for Sermon, let's say. All right. We got FFPC Superflex. And also a reminder, I mean, if you're in those FFPC leagues, the cut downs, the first waivers, they're coming up right around the corner. Been a bit of a dead period since that secondary draft there on the annual calendar. We got Carson Wentz in Superflex, shallow format here for a first and a third next year.
I wouldn't. I mean, this is high up there on the urgency level of smash, right? This is a drop the. This is a drop the. No, this is more significant than that. Like, this is a throw the baby and run to the phone to smash accept. Like, it's a high level smash accept for me.
Because you are going to get looks at starting quarterbacks in FFPC. You just simply, I mean, teams can't roster more than 3 or 4 of them max. And there's going to be plenty of backups that are out there. So just keeping your eyes peeled anytime you can take a spot, where maybe some other player that is on your fringe has a bye week, you churn it out, you up your probabilities for that week with a backup quarterback. All right, we got a big boy one here. In one quarterback, we've got Tyreek Hill, 4, CeeDee Lamb, and a first next year.
Wow. I'm surprised there's that much difference in the cost. One quarterback?
Yes, sir.
I'm surprised there's that much of a difference between them.
You're not a Lamb fan. You are on record of the price of being paid, but yet you got to pay the first to upgrade here.
Yeah.
It is a later projection. I don't know if I included that, but
yeah, I'd probably like to do that in a different way. Here's my question: if you take the Hillside on this, how do you lose outside of injury? And like, I don't see the catastrophic loss there. If
Lamb would have to blow up and basically be close to even, and then obviously that pick is in a good zone in the right year where you get a look, at someone that ends up being, it's a round 1 wide receiver that has an early return. It's a day 2 running back in that, back half of the round, if you trust the projection. So
yeah. I mean,
you're locking in he's like 26 right now, and you're locking in with Mahomes. I mean, yeah, that's definitely, and I thought you were going to more quickly take that side. Don't like giving up first, but you're upgrading.
First.
It feels like the market, like you said, should be a little bit closer on these players, but one's a clear-cut number 1. One of them you hope someday is a number 1, and one of them has Patrick Mahomes. I don't know. It feels pretty. If this was an early projection first, then I think we probably go that side. But strong team, adding Tyreek Hill, and you're kind of thwarting the upside of that pick by getting Tyreek Hill.
Yes.
All right, Mac Jones deal, and this is 14-team Superflex. Mac Jones for James Robinson.
Mac Jones.
All right, pretty quick. I think this deal was before Cam Newton was cut, but I don't know if that should make a huge difference, because he would start, sooner-ish rather than later.
Yeah.
We got one more wide receiver pivot deal. So this is Amari Cooper in Superflex, Amari Cooper, a first, and then a second for Devontae Adams.
Wow, a first and a second next year for Devontae Adams.
Superflex,
yeah. Well, here's the interesting part: is like, I think Adams is a touchdown regression candidate. I like Cooper quite a bit. I think if I'm not absolutely dead red, like I'm gonna get a buy, I think I'm taking the Cooper side. Just because I think there's a little bit more outs. Like, Adams is going to be a falling, come 12 months from now, like January, they could be pretty close to the same price, right? Like
similar age. Cooper's a little younger, but yeah, I mean, Cooper staying with Dak Prescott has a longer over under than Devontae Adams.
Right. Yeah, because there's
based on the
multiple outs at
calculus
which
we
that
have.
doesn't happen, right? Like,
Right.
he could leave. He's on his last year of a deal. It looks like Rodgers is sort of there too, although we don't exactly know that. But yeah, I mean, I think that Cooper could technically, I think, be cut at any point. That seems unlikely. It just seems unlikely that they would do that. Gallup's going to be walking out. We have questions about Lamb. I think you have a much better idea of what that looks like over the next 24 to 36 months than you do with Adams. And Adams is heading in a direction where his price is going to be falling. So I think this is an out on that right now. And, you're kind of doing it at the point where you're benefiting off of last year's variance.
I think it's interesting that the dichotomy of these two deals of Lamb and a first for Tyreek Hill, and then you have to give more, and it's super flex with those picks, going Cooper to Adams, where Adams doesn't have the same insulation as Tyreek Hill of situation and role and all that kind of stuff of variables. I think Adams is one that the market has fallen on him a little bit, but frankly, it's this year, and then there's a lot of question mark. Not that he's not a great player, but what will that situation be in 2022? Will he be there? What will the quarterback be? Will he move on elsewhere? A lot of variables involved. All right, so time for some quotes from the Footballguys Dynasty Forum. We left some time for this because we've got some ones to unpack here. First one, Miles Sanders is on a train wreck of an offense. They don't trust the quarterback. I would say they have two of the best backups in the whole NFL now on the Eagles depth chart there. They don't trust the quarterback. The wide receivers are marginal players no one's heard of outside of Diva the Slim. Interesting. The offensive line is a wreck. I can't see them being worth any real assets in fantasy.
Can you go back a minute? Did you say Diva the Slim? Is that a thing?
Deva the Slim? Wow. I'm just reading it.
Okay.
I'm a newsman. I'm just reading it. This is a quote. This is a quote, Jordan.
You're Ron Burgundy in this. We're just putting it in front of you, and you're just reading it.
Exactly. But no one's. How about that though? No one's heard of any wide receiver other than Devonta Smith on the team.
Yeah.
Started playing this year.
I mean, yeah. Say what you will about Jalen Reagor, but I heard of him. I don't. It's interesting because we've sort of gotten to this point where all of those guys from that class have fallen, and they've fallen out of these guys are still on rookie deals with multiple years of insulation, and him, Montgomery, and Jacobs, who have performed better than you could. They're going to probably outproduce better classes after them, right? That's where we are with that class. It's pretty good. And all of a sudden, they're going in the late teens or the 20s of the running back position, and they're all
stink.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I mean, we're horrendous at predicting quality of offense. We're just really bad at it. And it doesn't matter all that much to me for the running back quality either. So I'm not worried about that. I mean, I think at his cost, I think, he's going at running back 22, 23. I got him in a draft recently. I think it was running back 24. At that point, you have to take him. When he was going running back 10, I wasn't on him. But again, everything in this world is about cost, and he's one that at that cost, I'll take it. And listen, if there's stink there and it's making the person cheaper, that's great. That's why we're on Jacobs. It's
he's in Miles Sanders is in that prime window though of saying this is like Joe Mixon. I mean, if they have their best year, this is a really good year to have it. In terms of career arc, it hasn't really happened. They've shown enough to date. I do wonder they shed Jordan Howard, but they have two pass-centric guys in Boston Scott and Kenny Gainwell. And then you've got the coming out the other side, rushing ability, probably going to siphon a few touchdowns, Jalen Hurts. And that's sniping both sides of him of maybe a few touchdowns, also some of the passing game work. I would have more concerns about that. And same as you said, the level of the offense matters for the level of quarterback specifically for the passing game weapons, but with the running backs, not so much. You can survive and thrive without being a top even 20 offense. And if anything, you got questions about the passing game, guess what? You're probably going to lean more on your good running backs just because you got questions there. And the longer you can hang around with your running backs in games and run the ball and control it and don't take a ton of risks, so be it. I feel like that almost, it works both ways sometimes. You can outsmart yourself. You just got Waddle Jaylen Waddle in the mid-first. So far, he's done nothing to make you feel he won't live up to the pick. So unless you know the 22 first is early, I don't know why you would make the trade. Referencing someone moved Waddle post-draft for a 22 first.
I mean, I like the liquidity angle of that. I mean, I maybe you could have done more with that, but that's probably a late first this year. I don't know what the format was.
But if you weren't able to trade 108 or 109 or whatever it was for a 22 first, that's what you wanted to do. Mm-hmm. So you do it with the player afterwards. Right. It's not unheard of. But yeah, Waddle is not like he is flawed, in terms of him as a prospect. Should he have gone as high as he did in the draft? It's a pretty loaded depth chart. Thinking he gets off to some fast start is a real scenario here of he finishes at wide receiver 68. All right, where do you sit in January? You hope Will Fuller's gone, Devontae Parker gone. I mean, you hope it's cleared out, but you still don't know if he's an alpha.
Yeah. Yeah, and you might, and they have questions about their quarterback too, right? Like they've told us this over and over again, and I think it's right to have those questions, and it's not even a fault. Like you could see this thing going well, you could also see it going poorly. And I'll say one thing about them, like they do a lot of things that we tend to like from a franchise. There's a ton of turnover there, and you keep seeing that turnover, and you're like, oh, is that really that great of a situation? You have multiple offensive coordinators now. You've had these are the third and fourth offensive coordinators in the past 3 years, right? So I mean, you're kind of seeing a lot of turnover there. I'm not sure that the situation is as good as we're giving it credit for.
Imagine how exciting this team could be with like a Ryan Fitzpatrick type under it.
Could you imagine?
Yeah. Creating a roster spot is an often overlooked and underappreciated aspect of multiplayer deals. The best trade calculators account for this as a +1 or -1 in terms of the roster room resulting from such trades. I didn't write
I agree. And my preferred Dynasty trade calculator does this. So for what that's worth.
Yeah, I think when especially around this time of year, if you got roster cut downs, I mean, that's sort of a mandatory part. But I will say in shallow leagues, whether that's FFPC, ones that are 22, 24, 25 man rosters, even, it gets tight. You need some elbow room, and anytime you can clear a spot, if it's not the classic player for a future pick, so that's a +1, you get a free pickup off the waiver wire. Go shopping, my friend. But even if you can do a 2-for-1 or anything like that, maybe you're trading for a player that's IR eligible, taxi eligible, whatever it is. But yeah, I'll tell you, when roster spots are tight and you get that freebie because you actually made a flip trade, and now you can just go shopping and you pick up some running back you like, maybe you needed a tight end streamer, whatever it is, it's part of the deal. And a lot of times it's funny that you'll pick up a player close to, we're in some of these leagues that are pretty tight rosters, and it's like you end up trading a player for a third or something, but it's like, well, I'm picking up a player I basically view the same. So you just rinse and repeat that a bunch of times because people look at so-and-so just popped a little bit. Well, I mean, is there really any staying power there? All right. We got one more here. I don't see what good Kelce does for a rebuilding mediocre team.
Well, if you're mediocre, he can put you into the playoffs, right? Depending on what your format is, right? He's got 2 win potential in some of these premium formats. So there's that. So if you're rebuilding, he's one of those players, like if he was on your team last year, even if you thought you were rebuilding, you probably weren't, right? You were probably in playoff contention. The question I always ask myself, if we're being honest, is, what is this player going to be on your next contending team when you're rebuilding? If you're not, you need to get out of that, right? If you're not, but be honest with you, if you're middle of the pack and you've got Kelce, right, like that can be a big difference, right? He can move the needle, and he could move the needle for a couple of years still. So I wouldn't rush unless I was totally out of it, which we don't advise to make that determination right now. And unless you're really out of it, and hint, if you have Kelce, you're not really out of it in August. Unless I would, let's see where the chips fall and potentially move him unless you get a Godfather offer.
Yeah, we've said this before, but August, early September, declaring your team direction is a real dicey game. And that's why, trading for future first, a lot of people overstate, understate, what their pick looks like, because we just don't have the data points so far. In the NFL, I mean, let's shake up the boggle container. It's going to be a lot different in a couple weeks than whatever you think, whatever hubris and confidence you have about players, teams, situations. I mean, just scoring 2-3 touchdowns in the month of September makes your stat line look a whole heck of a lot better. Or some guy not scoring for 6 weeks, even though they're the starting running back. Little things like that really shade. Well, now I'm 2-3. Great. It's all because, Miles Sanders hasn't scored a touchdown or whatever it is. But you got to be careful. I like what you said, which is your next time you're contending. That could be this year. Maybe you think you're the 9th best team in the league, but 6 make the playoffs. Stranger things. And Kelce is 31, going to be 32 in season. It's not like he's dead. He's on this historic track of I mean, are you really going to say, well, because he's younger, I need to trade him for Noah Fant and a second, or I need to trade him for a, Jaylen Waddle, who we just brought up, plus, a future second to first upgrade. Like, I think you need to be really careful about shedding your best players. If you got an older wide receiver, you got Travis Kelce, and maybe you've got Zeke. Be careful about just like, well, they all have to go. I'm sorry. They are just too old for their position, because you guaranteed will not succeed this year. And you probably are punting yourself out of next year as well, depending on the rest of your roster. So be careful, because a lot of times these rebuilding teams can turn into long rebuilds. And it's frankly the GM's fault, because they committed themselves to it. You lock in. Like I pick over teams, and I'm sure you have as well, where it's like, no, this team, like, why would I just break it up for parts? Like, no, it's a good team. There you go. I'm running Kelce till the wheels fall off. He's an all-timer. This is the Tom Brady philosophy, right? Of don't count the all-timer out. And that was like, people were discounting Drew Brees 3 years before he retired. I mean, it's just gravy. Tom Brady, every year he plays is like a printing press for everyone, like the superflex that acquires him. Right. And Kelce, who's to say Kelce will not be Tony Gonzalez or Jason Witten, where the mid-30s, they're still a tight end one. Yeah. So that would be my last foray here, is just the all-timers. And I'm not saying you're putting a lot of guys into this group. We're not saying this about Jared Cook and, like anybody that's older at their respective position, or Zach Ertz. They aren't there. Kelce is still the top, the pinnacle of his position. Pitts has got to come take it. Hockenson has to come take it, because he's not giving it up easily. And he's got some guy named Patrick Mahomes. So be careful. Be careful. All right. So we went over some Dynasty trades this week. Do want to remind you about, if you're into shows like this, the Footballguys premium subscriptions. We have a DFS package. We also have the season-long pro. You're going to get things like My Footballguys. It's my go-to in terms of organizing all my leagues. It highlights my players, highlights who's available, makes it very easy with weekly projections. Anything you need to save you time on a weekly basis to get doing what we love more, which is thinking about trades, thinking about our team construction, setting our lineup, all these things, and your minutes every single week coming up right now are valuable. So you can sign up, and we still have about another week to actually put in your team for the Footballguys subscriber contest. You can win 5 figures in that contest. So by signing up, and the longer you wait, you're just going to miss out on content leading up to week 1. If you sign up during the season, absolutely you can, but you're going to miss out on time without it. So never been a better time to sign up at footballguys.com. There's a join now button up in the upper right-hand corner. So you're going to get all that league winning information and guidance, and a reminder to sign up for that Footballguys daily email update from Joe Bryant. We reference it all the time. You can see the Dynasty newsletter show. We have a ton of news going on the Footballguys spectrum of podcasts on a weekly basis. But that's where a lot of it stems from, is from that daily email, so you don't miss a beat. And this week, we're going to have a lot of news, and heading into week 1, don't be left behind there. In this episode, we discussed a lot about trading into new tiers, what that upgrade is worth. We talked about team directions by potentially trading away rookie picks. Might not make a lot of sense if you're not in your contending window. And of course, we talked about the Patriots changing quarterback situation and the Baltimore Ravens changing running back position. So for Jordan McNamara, myself, Chad Parsons, and until next time, good luck in your Dynasty leagues.
Oh,